Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for coming today on what some might be an early Saturday. Today we're going to go over the main concepts of UX and some of the deliverables you'll see. We're not going to go into depth in any of these concepts. However, if you have any questions after the presentation, please let me know. I'm going to say half of the presentation. We're going to have a 10-minute break, and then Madel will share her presentation. And if this is something that interests you, let us know, and we'll put on more UX workshops. So what we're going to cover in this presentation is what is UX, UX design, general tasks, the 5 core concepts of UX design, the UX process, and UX deliverables. So this has happened to me many times. And this is an example of a terrible user experience. You never want your user to feel stupid or confused or frustrated. Pretty much don't make them think. If they have to think about something, you need to go back to your UX process and do a redesign. So what is UX design? UX design has been around since there have been humans. However, the way we think about UX design is fairly recent, especially with computer and digital products. The kind of the father of modern UX is Don Norman, and he believed that UX is quality of experience they have when they're interacting with a specific design. Everything a user will experience with a product must be useful, usable, and desirable. So how you feel about it, how you like the colors, how easy it feels, everything. It's way more than how a product looks. So many people confuse UX designers with graphic designers. Graphic designers tend to focus mostly on the aesthetics. However, UX designers will focus on the user experience. And to do that, they have to conduct user research, create user personas, determine the information architecture of a product, designing user flows and wireframes, creating prototypes, and conducting user testing. So we're going to go over some of these in greater depth later on in the presentation. So the 5 core concepts of user experience: information architecture, visual design, interaction design, usability, and prototyping. Information architecture is how we organize information, what we name the information, structuring the content so that it is understandable and easy for your users to find. So a lot of this has to do with the navigation and where we're putting specific information. One of my biggest pet peeves with really bad UX is trying to find a contact us page or a contact us section, or the very least, frequently asked questions. There are many times I've been on a website and I need to contact the company because their service isn't working. And if there is no easy way for me to do that, for me, that company loses credibility. So organizing that structure of information, labeling it, and not calling things funky, gimmicky words, like if you're gonna have a contact us, have it contact us, not something silly like be with us now. It's weird. People are looking for certain conventions. And building out that navigation, especially in websites, is going to help your user find that information. And even how we do system searches. Is there an easier way for your person, to, if they get lost, to find their way back? So this is an example of a sitemap. So even before you build out your product, you want to organize your information so that you know where to place it and what categories need to be chunked together. So currently in my classroom, we are building a independent publishing website. So they have a home, an authors, books, about us, and contact us section. All of this are the main things in the navigation. Then below that, we have an authors drop-down menu where people can search for very specific authors. We have a book section, and they can look for the specific genre they're looking for. And when they click on a genre, they can search for very specific books. About us, if they want to learn more about our company and the values, and a way to contact us. So this is an important step before you even build a product. You want to organize your information. Visual design is still very important. The certain concepts that we go over are semiotics, Gestalt principles, and graphic design to communicate the brand and effectively communicate to our users. Right here is an example of a style tile. And so even before you build out that product, you want to make a clear understanding of the feel of your product. So here are the colors that are going to be used. This is what the navigation is going to look like. This is going to be the logo. This is the button. And this is the button when someone hovers over it. Another really important aspect is having high enough contrast. So one of the major pitfalls of user experience versus visual design is I know a lot of graphic designers come into web development and they'll have a really beautiful website, but it is so low contrast that when you're out on the sun, you can't read the words. It's just not high enough contrast. So it has to be beautiful, but it must first be useful. So I use these terms that you might not be familiar with. Semiotics, it's the study of symbols and meaning making. So most of us will recognize what this means, even though it's not words. We're not really communicating. This is the left arrow. This is a happy face. And this is a cake. This is one way of effectively communicating to each other. Another thing is even the hamburger menu, just 3 lines, and most of your users will know to click on that to see more of the menu. Then we have Gestalt principles. This is the psychology of how we visually group information. So when we look at these circles, we know that there's similarities between them. They're all circles. But because this is grouped together and they're closer together, our mind views them as one piece, and this is a second piece. So that's one of the Gestalt principles. And then we have graphic design, like colors, typography, and layout. So with this makes you feel like this is pretty hip, refreshing, and joyful colors. So all these things will affect your user experience. And then we have interaction design. So this designs how a user can interact with a product to achieve their goals in a useful, easy, and maybe even in a fun way. So in the example right here, I got this from the Interaction Design Foundation. They're animating a success prompt. So when you fill out a form, you need to provide your user if they were successful in filling out the form or unsuccessful. If you don't, your user will feel frustrated because they're not sure they completed the task. Another way to design interaction is when you hover over a button. Does it change colors? Does it get larger? Does the font change? Having movement in buttons and in interactions allows your user to know that they are on the right path to achieving their goals. And usability. Wait, did I skip one? Usability. It doesn't matter how pretty, how many bells and whistles you add to your design. If it is not useful to your user, it's garbage. When you are designing, you want to ask yourself these questions. Does my design support and help my user? Is my design confusing? Can my design become more useful in any way? You want to really think about these three concepts. Is it intuitive? Am I forcing my user to think? Is it effective? Is it the easiest it can be? And is it satisfying? Is it bringing joy and happiness to my user? If I effectively combine these three concepts, then I make something that's usable. So this is important because when we're designing something, we can easily think about our own needs and lose idea that this is going to be used by someone else. We have to always think about the other person. And we also have prototyping. So often, a lot of tech companies will just hire a whole bunch of developers, build something out, and if it's not built with good user experience, you're going to end up losing a lot of money because the developers are going to constantly have to rebuild a terrible product. So prototyping is the idea where you can test without having to build an expensive, fully realized version of the product. And there's a few ways you can do this. You can use a pencil and a piece of paper. There are applications like InVision and Sketch where you can have digital copies of your prototype. And I will show you an example of that. So this is a prototype of the Long Beach Women in Tech website that we're hoping to launch soon. So we are using the InVision app, and this is something that's clickable. So it's kind of like a clickable PDF. So here's our navigation. As you see, when I hover over resources, it turns into a hand. So it's an arrow and then it's a hand. That's one way of designing an interaction. If I go into About, there's a way you can learn more. Resources. Blog. And below is the footer, is a way to contact us. And even within here, I've sent this to a few people and they thought that this was our website. So we were very quickly able to build this without having to spend much time thinking about the design. So is there any questions? I explained everything so well. Okay, so if there's no questions, we're going to take a 10-minute break and then Madel will show us her work. So please be back at 1:35. Okay, thank you for coming back. I'm going to discuss the UX process now. So we discussed the core concepts of user experience, and now we're going to discuss the UX process. So the most important thing to know is that the UX process is never done. First, you want to empathize with your users. What do they want and what do they need from your product? Then you want to define your problem. What do your users need from your product? Ideate. Create as many potential solutions to solve that problem. Prototype to create low-cost samples to test your solutions. Test to see if your solutions are useful. And then repeat. So even here in this example, every step of the process, you're going to need to go back to make your product as optimal and useful as it possibly can be. Okay. Madel, do you want to go over the UX deliverables?
Sure. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Madel, and I will be talking a little bit more specific about UX deliverables. So let me just pull up the presentation really quick. Great, so I will just be covering 7 common deliverables, but there are many more. I'll highlight it in the following slides. I'm highlighting a few projects that I've gone to collaborate on. And I will also add that UX has become such a popular field in the tech industry, but I think it's as it was formerly known as human-computer interaction, it's growing even more in popularity because one of the important things of having UX and designing through the whole UX process is that you're putting the user at the forefront of any design, any development of an app, whether it be an app or a website. So the first deliverable that tends to be popular amongst designers is the user personas. And this is a fictional person that represents your user. These are only created after you have established your user during research. It's used typically to help everyone on the team remember they are building this product for the user and not themselves. So typically as designers, we tend to create and there could be a lot of biases going into development. And so it's important that at the very core of the whole process, the user is always put at the forefront. And personas are a really fun and great way to really start to understand who the user is. Of course, these are more effective when they're developed after research has been done. So after you've done surveys or interviews and you compiled all the notes and synthesized the findings and putting it all into a persona. So typically a persona is a user persona and it will include the following. So typical users, their goals, motivations, skills, background, and many more, depending on like how much in depth you want to go with your persona. So this is an example of a project that a few of my colleagues did in school, and we wanted to create a hub for research assistants so they can go onto the site and start navigating research projects and be able to get involved in that way. And so we came up with a few personas, and typically you want to come up with a few just so that you can have a diverse understanding of who your user will be. And so we came up with Olivia, who's 28. She's a research administrative assistant in the chem department. She's a tech-savvy person, Mac user for 5 years, and some of her favorite websites. These are just characteristics that, in order for us to understand her as a user, sort of like we developed favorite websites that she likes. So she's on LinkedIn, she likes YouTube. A career before RA, so we come up with based on our research, we came up with a brief description of what she's done before being an RA. Current career development resources, what she's navigated, what she's done in the past or currently, and then also some functions or resources in terms of like our websites. As we're building this website, we want to make sure that we're understanding based on what we've gathered, what creates a function website and what type of resources we can put on there. And then most personas, they vary. So depending on the research or depending on like what you synthesize, you can also describe a little bit of what her goals are or what's her personality or what does she do in her free time, so then we can better create more empathy amongst our users. Storyboards are actually a lot of fun, and they illustrate what tasks your users are trying to complete and under what circumstances. And typically these have been inspired by movie industry, but as designers, UX designers, we developed them into our process. And they're really awesome because you can start it in the early on stages of your design phase, where you can go step by step and create a storyline of, you take your user and you navigate how they're going to interact with your product, whether it be a site or an app. So here's just a brief example that I worked on with a colleague of mine. We were creating an app called Unicorn. And our whole purpose, our whole goal of the app was to provide a platform for PhD students to be able to connect with other PhD students while also being able to track their mental health and also being able to check in with themselves. And so here we have a student in this first square. Rita's in her office. She's working really hard, really rigorously in her program. And then she gets a notification from Unicorn. In this particular scenario, we also embedded a bot, like an extension on Slack for the Unicorn app, so that because Rita's already using Slack, she's already embedded with that system. So she plugged in her Unicorn app, she linked it so that she can get notifications on her computer. So she gets a gentle reminder from Unicorn. And this third box, she checks, she opens up the Unicorn bot, and Unicorn asks, hey, how stressed are you feeling today? And then she can scale and she selects, oh, I'm feeling 6, and she'll type it in. And this box here, Unicorn bot, it asks her, it's kind of hard to read, but I'll read it out loud. What is causing the stress? And then, so then at that point, Rita can check in with herself, and she says, oh, academic, she's in a PhD program, so obviously it's very rigorous. Then Unicorn will ask, hey, do you want to talk about your physical or emotional well-being? And at the moment, because she's so busy trying to get her paper done, she's like, no, not at this moment. So then Unicorn bot in this last box here, okay, says, all right, thank you for your response. Until next time, and then the end. So this is just an example of like one interaction and one scenario for this particular product. The third deliverable that tends to be pretty popular is a customer journey map. And this tracks the customer experience while using the product and completing tasks. So whether, and now there's a question about where other scenarios can UX be implemented. And I've been seeing a lot of like this huge trend. For example, marketing teams and companies are now implementing UX design and UX methodologies, and even how they market their websites or how they're taking their marketing strategies in their teams. So I think it really just depends, and UX can be applicable in many industries. And because it's new, but it's becoming so popular and trending, that there's going to be a surge, I think, of other companies jumping on the UX wagon, because you want to understand your users. Companies want to understand their customer experiences. Customer journey maps are fun, and this is just a template that I borrowed from a Medium article. And you can lay it out where on the horizontal axis here, you go steps through time. So from the very beginning that the user picks up your device or your site or interacts with your product, they go through different steps. So record, you can download to a computer, import editing software. It's like just go step by step into their journey with your specific product. On the vertical axis, then you start to track, okay, what are the actions? Is it a click? Is it a download button? You start asking questions, documenting the customer's moments, like are they feeling joyful, are they feeling frustrated, pain points. So here you start to identify what specific areas could be improved on throughout the customer journey, and then opportunities for improvement. And these charts can vary. I think it depends on like the product and the overall goal. The fourth deliverable, brainstorming sessions. Now these are a great way to sort of like get creative. But in this phase, you want to generate as many ideas as you can. At this point, there's no no judgment in any if an idea is good or bad, and you write down as many ideas as you can, and you will be surprised by how many ideas you come up with. I had a professor in my interaction design course where when we started feeling creative block, whether we were in the middle of the design process or towards the end or at the very beginning, she would stop and have like 15 minutes brainstorming sesh. And I remember we had like a huge, one of those like poster like papers, and she gave us a bunch of sticky notes, and it was like she gave us a task. Like come up with a creative way of how to use winter mittens in Michigan during the winter. And so it was like 15 minutes, just write, or draw like as many ideas as possible how to use winter mittens. And it was such a silly task, but it was a lot of fun because that got a creative flow going. And I think brainstorming sessions are really great to do at any step of your process. These are a few examples. And so in our Unicorn app, my colleague and I, we did a stakeholder map where we took our user and then we wanted to understand the different relationships that the user would have. So since we were focusing on PhD students, we put them at the core center, and then we started thinking about, okay, well, PhD students have social groups. So they have peers. They'll have relationships with their, family and like friendships. And then we just sort of identify like faculty advisors, school administration. And so then we started understanding like what these relationships and how these link to our target user. And I think stakeholder maps are pretty awesome if you want to have a bird's eye view of what the user would experience when it comes to like relationship, and how can we incorporate those into the app. This picture here in the middle, as is in to be activity, is an activity that we did early on in our design process because we wanted to put ourselves in our user's shoes. So this was after we sent out a survey, and right before we went into interviews, we did an as is and to be activity. And this was more so that we can understand where our app is now, or how our app would support PhD students at the present moment, and then think about like what would that support look like in their second year of the program or the third year or so forth. And so we did a couple iterations of this process actually, because it was very challenging for us because neither of us were PhD students, but it allowed us to understand where they're at, but it also allowed us to maybe predict like where our app would be beneficial for, or where in their PhD student our app would be more useful for them and beneficial. This last picture on the right hand of the screen, the co-design storming sesh. So I worked on an internship last summer in Ecuador with this organization called Nido de Vida. And our final deliverable for that project was a documentary. And so my partners and I, when we went, we held a co-designed brainstorming session we were coming up with the interview questions. And we were trying to understand what was the goal of the interviews that we were going to be conducting with community members. And we used I implemented this process where we invited two key stakeholders, and these were both Lenine and Lucia. They worked for Nido de Vida, but because they were from the community, we invited them to help us out in creating our interview questions. And this was really fun because it was a hands-on workshop. So they got to focus in, and they got to really participate firsthand, and then they came up with the questions. It wasn't just us assuming this is what you want to know. They already had an idea of what they wanted to know, what questions they wanted us to ask from community members, and this was a fun way to get their input. And then, so this was a multi-layer process because we just had like a brain dump. Then we sort of outlined the questions into themes, and then we were able to build out our interview protocol and our interview questions for the community members. The fifth deliverable is a user flow. And this breaks down the actions that users take to complete a task or goal. So they are used to communicate the user's need to their team, including developers and product owners. So similar to what Nicole had mentioned earlier, this is really useful in the design process because, especially, for example, if you're building out a website, you want to understand what's high priority, what's high level, and what's low priority when your user goes onto the website. So this lucid chart, flow chart that I borrowed from a project that I'm currently working on, I'm partnering with Neil de Vida and redesigning their website. And it was really important for me to map out how the user was going to interact at every stage of the website, from the very first web page that they see to the very last. And so this is useful because it takes the designer into the user's perspective, and then you go from like the cover page, and then you select a language, and then you start identifying what are the different tasks that a user goes, especially when on a website. And it's a good way to sort of see the flow, and you can start narrowing down, but also you can start seeing pain points, and you can start seeing like, oh, well, maybe this might be confusing for these reasons. Let's change it up a little bit, or let's add another task, or let's add a second step so that it can just become more innate for a user to navigate, whether it be a site or an app. 6, the site map. So this organizes the content and pages of the website, or it could also be organizing the content and whatever the different screens of your app. They form the hierarchy of the content and what pages go where, what information goes where. Sitemaps are also shows how a user can navigate through pages. So for this project that I worked on, we partnered with an organization on campus called ULEAD Network, and they have a really cool website where there's a ton of resources and information pertaining to undocumented students at the university. And this is accessible to students or any administration faculty that work specifically with undocumented or DACA students. And so they were concerned that, well, they weren't necessarily concerned, but they wanted to improve the user experience of their website. And so they brought us on, our team, onto their project, and we created a site map. And this was at our very early stage of our design process in order for us to have like a bird's eye view of how the site was organized, what information, what was a hierarchy of information, and how was a user able to navigate their information on the website. So we started off with the home page, and we sort of just kind of group each interaction or each content and page together. So you hover, and the site has like a map on the home page. When the user hovers over it, you can then navigate to state information. And then the second element was they had an About tab. And once you hover over the About tab, there's these 3 different links. So there's a who we are, a mission and vision, and a FAQ page. Then if you hover over the next tab on the website, you start to see they have a national context page, and they have an overview page where the user can navigate. And then they had like a resource tab. And the resource tab, as you can see, even based on our sitemap, contains the bulk of the information of this website. So it contains overview, scholarships and funding, modules, research reports, and webinars. So this really was helpful for us, for our team, to really start to navigate, okay, so what are some tasks that a user would would make when they go onto the ULE network website, or how is this information organized? Like obviously priority for them is to provide resources for students that are undocumented. So they spend a lot of time and effort putting together the resources page, as you can see here. And the last deliverable that I'll talk about today, and I'll get a little bit more in depth into each one, but I also want to say that prototypes are, like Nicole mentioned, they're really useful because they're inexpensive. And before you send your website or app to the development team, it's a really good way for you to test the usability of the product. There's 3 types of prototypes, and those include the low fidelity, high fidelity, and interactive prototypes. Low fidelity, really anyone can do. This is a no visual design or very basic. This is like what we designers sometimes skip this step, but in school we learned about paper prototyping. So essentially what the purpose of low fidelity prototypes is that they lay out the foundation, or essentially the skeleton of the design of whatever your product is. The picture here on the left is a sketch that I made. It was very bare bone, but this sketch that I made for the Nido de Vida website, so the current project that I'm working on, and we're redesigning the website. And this was sort of just to kind of give me a roadmap on like where certain elements were going to exist on the web page, but also to capture the client's goal. Oops. Here to the right, I know it's really hard to see, but these are the different screens that we came up with for the Unicorn app. So we have, we sketched a student profile page, and then a new entry form, home screen. And we were really keen on creating a feature on the app where you can have a data visualization, or the user can have a data visualization so they can see visually their stress level or their mood, or track by week and monthly. So we have a data visualization page. This one is the students are provided channels to talk on. So we wanted to create a sense of community within the app. So we included a feature where students can join channels with different PhD students within the program, but also be able to connect with their advisor or gather other information or resources. And then this feature here that we wanted to include, another student profile view with information on your common history or stress and emotion. So based on literature reviews and based on our research that we gathered from PhD students, we wanted to also make sure that we were respecting privacy. And so we gave the user an option on the app to share how you're feeling with others, or keep things private and just have it for yourself. High fidelity prototypes, these add the visual designs to the low fidelity prototypes. And they take into consideration the size of the screen. So here you can see that the sketches that we created for the app, and then here you actually have it like more nice and visually aesthetically pleasing. But here on the right, for the Unicorn app, we took our drawings and then we used, and there's a bunch of softwares that you can use. There's Sketch, there's Envision, which is an Adobe product, there's Figma, and these are all software that typically designers use to then put these high fidelity or visual designs together. I want to just highlight this one here to the left, this image to the left, which is the prototype, high fidelity prototype that I created for the Nido de Vida website. And I used Sketch to kind of put together what the website will look like now. So now I'm going to go through a few interactive prototypes. And these are clickable prototypes with no code. So you don't need to have a coding background. You can, if you want, if you're interested, if you're curious, I encourage you all. I think Sketch has a free version that you can use, or Figma has a free 14-day trial where you can hop on and create a prototype. But this would just give you a fun sort of example of what I've done in the past for projects. So let's see here. Cool. So this is the Unicorn app, and this is a very so our task would be if we're wanting to use the usability of the app or of our design, we would say something along like, okay, we want to test the different features of the Unicorn app. So, and throughout your interaction, you'll create a profile. You'll use the chat feature. So we want you to chat with others. We want you to join different channels. And then we want you to also look at the data visualization page, and we want you to start looking at your own like stress levels and moods for the week and the month. So the user would click, and then here it's like, oh, hi, Anna, how are you doing today? And then the user can then select, well, I'm feeling pretty bad today, actually. And the user can then have like an option to add a note or save the information. And I think I'm having a glitch here. Okay. So Nicole mentioned earlier too that in order for us to guide the user when we're conducting usability tests, you want the Figma specifically or other software products. They have like you have your pointer, but then if we want you to select something, like we change it to the hand. And I don't know why I'm having some technical difficulties here. But okay, so then here we'll tell the user, okay, now you see there's a little icon here for your message center, and you have some notifications. Why don't you go ahead and navigate to that? And you see that your advisor sent you a few messages. You have jobs that also send you notifications. Let's go ahead and see what your advisor says. Advisor, this is the message center, and the user can then go like, hey, this is a chat with your advisor. And you can select, yeah, let me respond and send it over. Then you can go back here and you can go explore. So these are the different channels of feature that we, if I wanted to test the usability, I can say, okay, I want you to join one of these channels. So because I'm interested in data and I need more support, I'm going to join the data research channel. So you're joined, great. Let's go track, and if we wanted to test a certain feature, for example, like the data visualization page, here is the user's chart. So your stress chart, whoa, it's gone off the roof on Saturday. What happened? Or like your mood, like on Saturday you were feeling pretty sad, or you were feeling great on Thursday. And these are just sort of features that we added. If you wanted to test, we would ask the user, check on your mood for Saturday, or tell us how you were feeling monthly or weekly. And so then, and some of these features, at least, or some of these softwares include features where if the user gets stuck or they don't know where to click, there's like little hints, like there's a box that kind of like popped up, so that kind of guides the user. So I'll go back to my homepage, and I can sort of track, like today I'm not feeling good, and I made it visible to everybody. But right now, my stress chart is off the chain, so I'm going to make it visible to my network. So I'll stop there with that demo link. I'm curious if there's anyone. So I have the second link that I have is a Unicorn Slack extension demo link, and I'm curious if there's anyone in the Google Hangout that wants to participate, and we can act as if this is like my usability test. If anyone wants to volunteer as a participant, and I can have you go through the Unicorn Slack demo link. Or I can do it if no one's interested. Who would like to be my volunteer, my usability tester?
Yeah, sure, I could do it.
Okay.
All right. Oh, and great. So I'm going to copy the link. Oops. gonna copy the link and then put in. I'm gonna put it on the chat box here. If you go ahead and click on the link, and then I'm going to ask you to share your screen so that I can see the steps that you're taking. If that's okay, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Here we go. So I'll just go ahead and present. Let's see, can I do where? Yeah, just a sec. There's a way I can share just a tab, so I'm going to try doing that. There we go. All right, is this coming through for everyone?
I believe so.
All right. Let's see. Although it looks like the screen isn't working for me.
Oh, okay. Well.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, so it looks like Unicorn has a little notification for me. Click on that. Okay, so wants me to type hey. If I type hey, I'm just clicking on it. I'm not actually typing the stuff in. But if I hit hey, it gives me choice to make answers between 1 and 5. And so apparently I'm a 4 today. Okay. And if I'm at an 8, and I want to share these results with my friends and peers on Unicorn. Sure. Cool. So it's just a little Slack bot that sends me a message and just asks for that kind of thing. So it gives me a pretty good idea of how it works. And for somebody who hangs out in Slack pretty much all day, that's a pretty simple little thing. You know, just another little message to respond to. That's kind of cool.
Yay! Thanks, Owen, for going through that.
Yeah.
And volunteering. So in this example, as a designer, I would take this. Let me go ahead and present here. I would take my prototype and say, "Hey, Owen, here's my prototype. I'm curious for you to just kind of test it out and see if and I can also just kind of identify a few tasks for Owen so that he can focus in on those tasks, or if it was just like an overall, like, hey, Owen, can you just do an overall use case, like you just see if it makes sense, or if there's anything that you think that, or is there a typo, or is there anything that you think that I can change before we send it off to the development team, and that way you can test the usability of it, test whether or not it makes sense. The Slack bot was something that came out of our research that we did with PhD students, that they thought, hey, you know, it would be really great to have a Slack box. I don't want to download another app. I already use Slack on the daily, and this would just be a good way for me to like check in with myself. So we thought embedding a Slack extension would be awesome for like someone like Anna or Owen, who's a user, who's a PhD student, can then check in with themselves since they're already using it. And then Owen will come back and give me feedback as a designer, and then we'd go back to the lab and either fix some of the pain points, or fix the colors, or fix the interactions based on Owen's test and feedback. So that's all I have for you all today. Again, happy to share any other information with you all if you're interested. There's a ton of resources online. Like I said, like I mentioned before, UX is becoming such a popular field, but I think it's important, especially if you're a developer, software engineer, or a data person, being able to understand the user experience and be able to, at the forefront, keep it in the design process, or keep the users in mind. I think will streamline the whole process and will probably save your company tons and tons of money instead of just sending something, a product without having user input, and then make something and then end up being like a really bad design or a really bad product. So it saves time and costs, and I think UX is an important thing to know. And you can spend, like, we can break down and even have a presentation on just one aspect, and there's tons of design methodologies. I'm happy to co-host with Nicole if someone wants to learn more specifically. Like, I want to create a prototype. Like, how do we go into that? Like, we can facilitate a whole workshop just for that. So yeah, thank you all for listening in.
Yes, thank you so much. We are open to questions, and we already have one. How did you become/start as a UX designer? So do you want to answer that, Madel?
Sure. I actually went to school. So I recently graduated with my Master of Science in Information, and I specialized, my specialization was UX research and design. And so it just so happened that I was already in school for another master, and I got a Master of Science in UX. I was just fascinated with the methodology and the process. Is it possible to enter this profession without a degree? I think that's a really good question. So I've been seeing boot camps. Like, there's different boot camps in LA that offer UX courses. There's like the UX Interaction Foundation where they offer free webinars. So I would check them out. I think because of the current nature of where we are, so I have a few people in tech, and my friend told me that right now UX is popular, especially if there's a new feature that an app is being developed or they want to deploy. And so UX is a good way to kind of get information and get the user's perspective before launching the actual feature. So it's become very popular. But I think right now it's hard to find an entry-level UX position. So not to discourage, but I think that if you are interested, first check out all the free resources online. Like, I would say don't pay a lot for a boot camp, because a lot of this information you can find online. There's a lot of YouTube videos. And then I think that if it's something that you're really interested in to break into this UX field, do freelance work. You can hop on projects that you can, put on a portfolio, start putting a portfolio together. And then again, I'm seeing in the comments here, like, portfolio. So that's like another workshop that maybe if people are interested in that, we can facilitate, because having a portfolio that showcases your work, even if it's freelance, like, it's a good way for you to start practicing and putting visual design elements together. So yeah, you don't need a degree, but it is hard to get into this field because it's become very popular and entry levels are very scarce. However, you can get practice by just going online for resources.
Mm-hmm. And I would also love to point out that most of the UX designers I know in tech do not have a master's or a bachelor's. They're career changers. Mm-hmm. So definitely a lot of free resources. I will send an email to everyone here, a list of resources that I have found. So I come from a graphic design background, moved into front-end development, and I teach front-end development and user experience. So just based off of that process, I've used a lot of UX to build my front-end development. So I don't spend most of my time in research, but I do read a lot about it, a lot about UX, because I want to make sure my products are great. So learning, I think even knowing a little bit of CSS might help you with an entry-level tech job, just because you can make the little tweaks to the front end. So that's one thing I would recommend. And to answer the question, the difference between a UX portfolio and a UI design portfolio is process. So in both, you really want to emphasize how you got to your final product. With user experience, that's a lot of research on users, a lot of the deliverables you saw in our presentation today. And with a UI design, that's more of like, how did you get to your visual design? Why did you pick the colors you picked? Why did you pick the typography you picked? So all about process. Do you have anything to add, Madel?
No, I ditto everything you said. I think that both UX and UI, in some companies or some spaces, they're interchangeable. And I know that there's some positions where it's just like a UI designer, so you're only focused on like designing like how the look, like typography, like the actual visualization of it, and that's it that you do. So as a UX person, I would go to you as a UI designer and say, hey, based on the research that I've gathered from the user perspective, this is sort of like the layout. Now the UI designer will go and make it pretty and visually appealing. And so, but then there's some, like a lot of startups, you do all of it. So you do the UX, you do the research, you do the design, and you do like the data, you look at the data and then you try to have like that drive your design decision. So it just varies. I know there's a lot of graphic designers that mainly have like a UI portfolio, because that's just like where they thrive and they have that experience. So they're interchangeable. I know Michelle had a question on what resources helped you learn. Personally, for me, I mean, I was fortunate to go back to school, and I was already plugged into the school because I was doing research with a professor. And so, I mean, that was the majority of my training. However, how I stay current, like right now during COVID-19, like I'm reading up on articles, UX articles. Medium.com is a really popular article, blog posts online, and they post a lot of like UX research and design articles. Podcasts, there's a bunch of UX podcasts too that I haven't listened to in a while, but yeah, I also connect with like different, like on LinkedIn, part of the Interaction Design Foundation, and there's like a bunch of other groups. So just like being plugged in. There's different also like Dribble is a part of Envision, where there's a bunch of UX design freelancers on there showcasing their work, and they yeah, and then they post their work and then they post resources. So that's sort of how I still stay informed and always developing, especially with such a growing market and it being so popular. And yes, I'm open to connecting with on LinkedIn. I can put in my LinkedIn information on the chat. Or I think Nicole.
Present our final
Okay.
screen. Can you see?
Cool. I have also a book that my professor for my mastery course recommended, and there's I got this one on Amazon, but it's the Universal Methods of Design. I'll type it on the chat box, but it's the mini pocket. There's a bigger version that goes more in depth, but I got the mini pocket because like this is helpful because there's like so many like different design methodologies. So it was a book that I like ended up investing in, but I'll type it on the group chat here.
Yeah, and I'll put our LinkedIn in the chat too. Yeah, Lima. Yeah, so Lima, she is saying that she works at a startup and she is a QA engineer, but she often has to do user experience, design, research, interfacing. Yeah, so with startups, you will often have to wear all the hats. And I love user experience because often as developers and other professions in tech, We're so focused in on building a well-performing product that we forget that people are actually going to need to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like Madel feels the same way, but I could talk about user experience all day.
Mm-hmm.
This could be an all-day workshop.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, I mean, I saw the comment in the group chat earlier where what other areas can UX be implemented? And like I said, like I you know, interviewed for a company, and they were going to bring me on as a UX architect for their marketing department. So, and that was like completely new for me because I'm usually, you know, on the product side, like developing and conducting research and design for like the products team, but they were implementing UX methodologies into their marketing strategy. And so I thought that was really cool. And I think that there's going to be that trend where there's other organizations where they'll start implementing UX methodologies into the different areas in the department, whether that be marketing, whether that be product development, or any other. And I come from also a social work background. And so I've worked in a nonprofit realm for many years before going back to school. And so I'm starting to also see that there's nonprofits that are going to start implementing UX design and research methodologies to understand like clients and users. And because we're all users, and I think no matter what industry you're in, like there's, you know, there's a lens to see clients and users alike. So you want to make sure that you're producing the better services for your clients or products to serve your users. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this trajectory goes as in terms of like UX.
Yeah, I mean, even in feng shui is one of the earliest forms of user experience that has been written down. And they often thought like, okay, how can we make this room the best feeling? That's kind of the essence of user experience. We just want someone to not even think about how well something is designed. If you don't think about someone's design, that's the perfect design. Great design is invisible. It seems effortless.
Mm-hmm.
It just works. You only notice design when it doesn't work. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming today. I know it's Saturday. We are putting on technical workshops and lectures every Saturday. And Owen put in our Slack. So if you would like to join the Long Beach Women Slack group, the link is right there.
Yeah, because you get a really cool talk on paper, but then the person's like a shit presenter. So you kind of knowing what you're going to get ahead of time.
I'm sorry.
And yeah, thanks for the presentation, ladies. This was awesome.
Okay, for a moment I thought you were asking a question, Owen. I was like, hello? Thank you, Rena. Yeah, that's a great comment.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
this
you.
Was fun.
Yes.
Hope it was useful or like you learned something new, and hopefully it sparks your curiosity. I'm excited to see you all in the maybe potentially in the UX field.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll email the slides, we'll email resources and our LinkedIn. Feel free to contact us on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Have a good rest of your day. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
Have a great Saturday, everyone.
Bye, Owen. Thanks for joining. Bye, Jay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Rena. Thanks for joining.
It'll probably take me 2 days to get this video up. You're curious, Madel.
Oh, okay.
I'll edit the video and then it'll be out there. Your face will be on the internet.
Oh, wow.
The internet is forever.
I know, right?
Yeah. We have a YouTube channel.
Yay! I should subscribe to it.
Like me, subscribe.
Yeah. Nicole, did you already do the Swift workshop one?
Yeah, we've done this. Oh, editing it? No, I'm gonna have Albert do it today.
Okay.
I'm volunteering Albert. Yes.
I had one note.
Looking at me like, what? I'm doing what?
I'll type it into Slack just as a reminder, but we just need to blur the phone number notification. I made a note of what time it's at so we can track it down easily.
Phone
That
number?
way,
Which
huh?
phone number? Which phone number?
Oh, there was just like a push notification for, I think, her messages.
Oh, I don't think that shows up.
Huh?
Those things don't show up.
When she was presenting, I saw it.
No, okay. Yeah.
So I think it is getting recorded.
Okay.
But we'll make sure, because we're posting on YouTube, we'll make sure to get rid of it.
Yeah, that'll be easy. Yay.
All right. Well, thanks Nicole for inviting me. Yeah. Thank you.
Seriously amazing. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you all. Thanks for the platform, and Nicole, it was great working with you, and excited. I mean, we might have to do another presentation. I don't know.
I know, right?
I want to see another one. That was amazing.
I told Michelle by the end of this lecture, she's going to switch over.
Come to the dark side, Michelle.
I'll just be lurking in the background like, hey, what are you guys
doing? We can use you. For the power team.
Exactly.
We got UX, front end, back end.
Oh,
yeah. See?
We are a power team.
Full stack right here, with not just the front end, back end, but understanding UX. Perfect.
Okay. I gotta get going. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Have a good one. Thanks, Nicole. Bye, Michelle.
Bye.